All right, boys, we are back. Still don't have a cameraman, but man, this has been a long couple days. A long couple days.
I can't tell you how frustrating it's been. God, I can hear it. It's a lot different from the Roadcast Road. You know, we're gonna roll with it because you know what? We want to bring you content. We want to entertain you guys. So let's just break down. We do a podcast Sunday. Feel really good about the podcast.
Ready to post Monday.
Yep.
This is last week. This is still November. We're planning on posting in November still of last Monday.
Yep. And we look at the Roadcaster, the soundboard. It doesn't work. But anyways, I guess I got to just do it anyways. And welcome back to episode 57 of Backhouse Productions. We don't have a guest. This is not a guest podcast no more. There's a lot to talk about. So last podcast we talked, or the podcast that was not shown.
Had a great conversation. We're pumped about posting it. We go to put it in and edit it, realize the audio's messed up. So we're thinking maybe some of the chords are messed up. Maybe something's wrong with that computer. Mm-hmm. So we change everything out. Still does the same thing. We realize it's the Roadcaster, our thing that we use our audio interface. So now we're having to get a new one or get it fixed. We have a warranty on it. It's going to be a couple of weeks. And now we're using GarageBand with somebody else's setup.
Shout out Move My Mask. You are a friend of the show.
Yep.
And we
shout out Move My Mask.
Appreciate it. You actually might be the first guest we have on.
Yeah, wouldn't be here without him right now. And now today we've been trying to set it up all day. Since 11 this morning, and it's about 5 o'clock now.
Can we just backpedal a little bit? Let's backpedal, okay? Because we haven't done a real podcast in 2 weeks. And so we had Thanksgiving break. We had rivalry weekend in college football. We had a lot going on. The Napoleon movie came out. And now we're watching the conference championship games right now. So I just want to dive straight into college football right now. I want to talk about Nick Saban. Because, damn it, I was not a believer in the Saban team this year. I thought Alabama did not have the horses to beat Georgia. I didn't think they should have lost to Auburn last week. But shout out Nick Saban. He's the greatest coach of all time in college football.
If they beat Texas, you wouldn't be saying this.
If they beat Texas?
Yeah, you'd still be saying Alabama's still it. All blah, blah,
oh,
blah,
yeah.
blah.
No, I mean.
And they should have beat Texas. 2 touchdowns got called back in that game, and I got screwed. I will never forget it.
Hook them, by the way. They're going to be in the playoffs. There's no way Alabama can jump Texas. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, they probably will be, but
Georgia's out of it.
Yeah.
Georgia's out of it. It's kind of happy. No one wants to see a team win 3-peat.
Georgia deserves to be in it, though. Even after losing to Alabama, I think they deserve to be in it.
The Washington game, Washington's a real deal, I think. I'm going to call it right now. Michigan's obviously going to blow out Iowa today.
Oh, yeah, they're going to
blow them out. They're probably going to win 35-9. Iowa's going to have 3 field goals somehow, win 10 I don't
even know about 35-9. I think it'll be 28-6.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that's an Iowa score, right?
Yeah.
And Michigan's, yeah.
I don't even think Iowa will get a touchdown.
I'm calling it right now. We got an Alabama versus Washington national championship game. And damn it, Kalen DeBoer's going to bring it home for the Huskies. I'm calling it right now.
You think Washington beats Texas then?
Washington
And you think Alabama
Michigan
beats Michigan? I think Alabama beats Michigan.
No, actually, sorry. Washington would play Texas. And Washington would beat Texas, yes, and then
Michigan plays Alabama.
And Michigan loses to Bama.
Bama beats out. Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
Bama beats Michigan for sure. I don't know about Washington beating Texas, though. That's going to be an interesting game. They could. After watching them last night, they definitely could.
It's interesting. But that Iron Bowl game was fucking nuts. You know what? This is a while ago now, but we watched the Napoleon movie, and it was very anticipated. Jackson, just give me your thoughts on the Napoleon movie after watching it.
Very solid movie. Very solid. Probably 7. I used to say 7.2. Now I'm probably going to say 7.5, 7.6.
You're saying the Napoleon movie is a 7.5?
Yeah.
You got to explain.
Your problem is
just explain it. You don't even know my answer yet.
Yeah, I do. We talked about
we did this last time. Just explain it though.
The Napoleon movie. It's not just about. First of all, Joaquin Phoenix is awesome in everything he does, but it's like the scenes, like the war scenes, that like the logistics behind those huge scenes, those massive scenes, like where it looks like there's at least 1,000 people, like. And for them to direct that and logistically, it's just a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
And they're able to do it, and they do it in a couple of different war scenes. Mm-hmm. And I know what you're going to say and why you don't like it because they didn't show certain things that you wanted to see in it. But minus that, I thought it was an awesome movie. And I know how you don't like how the ex-wife was so involved in it. But when you look deeper into that, like that's all they have from Napoleon is probably all those letters he used to write to him. That's why it's probably such a big deal in that movie. Like the letters he would write to his wife or ex-wife and the letters she would write back while he's off at war. Those are like his first accounts of him being at war somewhere, or like being in a camp ready to invade something. That's why I think they made it such a big deal. And when you look deeper into it, it's awesome how they did that.
Okay. So you're going to say 7.5.
Yeah, maybe even 7.6.
My original answer was a 6.8.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a 6.4. Because, okay.
I don't even care.
Let me give
Holly. Dude,
you just gave your explanation.
Let
me have my fucking time.
Nobody cares.
Let me have my time. Okay. 6.4. Let me give you the reason.
He gives a 6.4 movie to a movie that's going to win an Oscar.
Okay. Well, a lot of people don't like the Joker, and that won an Oscar. I'm going to say this right now. I think the extended version that's like 4.5 hours, I think that one's actually, it's probably the movie's way better, but no one has 4.5 hours to watch the film, so they had to condense a lot of it down and like shrink a lot of things. So you can't show his entire history of like what he did. But I get the role of Hollywood of like making it seem like Napoleon wasn't a good guy, right? Like he was a guy who wanted to take over Europe, so you have to paint him in a light that's negative. I get that too.
But they didn't even totally negatively paint him in a bad light.
They made him seem like a cock a little bit. I mean, he probably was, but that was the main point of it.
Dude, if you read like first accounts about Napoleon and stuff like that, like he's a human. Like he's not some stoic character, some Viking that you'd think of. Like he's a guy in the 1800s, like going to war with 100,000 people against a huge army. Like it's innate that you're gonna have fear. Any human has fear. If you don't have fear, then there's something wrong with you.
Okay. Yeah,
and they painted that really well in that movie, especially in that first scene. We started laughing when he's like freaking out.
Yeah. Okay. I like the scene where he was in Egypt and like he was looking at the tomb and he like gets the stool because he's so conscious about his height. He stands up, acts tall.
Yeah, and like just stares him in the eyes, and everybody's like, "What?"
Then puts a little Napoleon hat over the tomb.
That was cool.
Over the emperor.
That was cool.
You know, it was cool. Joaquin Phoenix is great. I know we already, dude. God damn it! I feel like we're doing the same podcast over and over.
No, we're not going to keep talking about everything we talked about last.
But okay. Leonardo DiCaprio should have been Napoleon.
Yeah, well, if Leonardo got deep, like that's what we said last time. If Leo got deep into it, like he did for Django,
yeah, like that's believable.
Get out of here, dude.
Like
get out of here. If that was Leo playing that, he would have got. He definitely would have had a Napoleon with a French accent.
I think I would have liked it. I honestly, just because it was Joaquin Phoenix.
Because you're such a Leo guy.
I'm a Leo guy. I like Joaquin Phoenix too. He was great in Gladiator. The same director who directed Gladiator directed this movie.
I didn't even know Joaquin Phoenix was in Gladiator.
Dude, he's Maximus.
He's
not Maximus. He's the
That's
emperor.
Butler. Oh yeah, he's the.
No, not
he's
Butler.
He's the second emperor. No, Gerard Butler was the Maximus.
Motherfucker, you're so wrong right now. It's not Gerard
was
Butler.
it?
It's Russell Crowe.
Oh yeah, Russell Crowe. I think
Crowe's
Gerard
Maximus.
Butler is Russell Crowe. I get them mixed up.
Gerard Butler's
right.
300. It's the same. Yeah.
No,
Literally
but I
looks
get
the
those.
same.
They look the same to me too. I always get their names mixed up. But So wait, Joaquin Phoenix was the son of the emperor.
Yeah.
And then he became the emperor.
We're talking about the movie Gladiator. Joaquin Phoenix is the son of Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, I kind of remember that. Okay.
So it's like the 5 great emperors of Rome.
I might watch that tonight.
So the 5 great emperors of Rome. It's like 5 consecutive emperors of Rome, where it was like the peak of
where they
Roman
were just
power.
taking over all the land.
Rome's power, yes.
Yeah.
And then he comes into power, and he's like the decline of it.
Screws
That's where
it
it starts to go.
Yeah.
Right. He's not stoic like his dad. He wasn't he wasn't willing to relinquish power like his dad. Yeah. He honestly, I would have liked it better if that character played Napoleon. Like that, the way he played that character in Gladiator, if you would have insert that into Napoleon, where you show like an actual like vicious side of Napoleon, like a dude that was just so relentless and just like was never gonna like.
But they did
give up land.
You're just, I think
they didn't show that part.
They did though, but I think your image of Napoleon is just skewed to what the actual Napoleon was like, because they did that. Like, what about when they're in Moscow and they start burning it down and he goes, I can't believe this guy would rather burn his own city than talk to me. We marched to St. Petersburg, and everybody, all his generals are like, no, dude, he is relentless. It's just in a different way than you're thinking he is. Like, he's not just a savage, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay,
it's just in a different light. Like, he might be on the spectrum.
You think?
When we get back to the spectrum thing, he could have been. The way Joaquin Phoenix portrayed it, it looked like he could have.
This is great. Who do you think, some great historical figure from history, who do you think was on the spectrum? Leonardo. You think Leonardo da Vinci?
I don't know enough about him. Probably one of those guys like Plato or Socrates or Aristotle, one of those. if not all of them.
Like you think they were like cross-eyed?
Something, dude.
No
They
way.
could have been on the spectrum.
Don't,
They could've.
you know what? Don't tarnish my fucking.
Dude, some of the stuff that they came up with for philosophy is still relevant today.
Yeah, it's still applicable.
Yeah, and to come up with that many years ago, dude, they could have been. Very well could have been. I'm not saying they did. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, but they very well could have been.
So are you saying that they were on the spectrum? It's almost like a superpower. They were so advanced above like the average human that they were like off a little bit because they didn't like fit in with the crowd of people.
I'm not saying that they were like a super. I'm just saying they thought differently than everybody else.
Yeah.
It's basically like it always takes somebody to think differently to change the world. Like think of the first person. I don't even know when this was made, but think of the first guy who invented like the wheel.
Okay.
Thousands of years ago.
Was that Copernicus? I feel like I'm so wrong about that.
That probably changed the game when a wheel was invented.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or then when a steam engine was invented.
Oh, yeah. You want to get
Like,
into the Industrial Revolution.
But I'm just
absolutely.
saying, like, it takes a person who thinks totally different than everybody else to change the game.
And you
I'm
would have
saying
to be on the spectrum.
Aristotle or one of those guys was like that, if not all three of them.
Damn.
But wasn't one of them like their teachers of another or something? Like Aristotle taught Plato or something?
So the first guy's Socrates. Socrates taught Plato. Then Plato taught Aristotle.
Yeah, so that's what I mean.
And then Aristotle
So I
taught
bet you one
Alexander
of those
the
guys.
Great.
I bet you one of those guys was on the spectrum.
Do you think Alexander the Great was on the spectrum?
No.
Okay. How do you view Alexander the Great then? Do you know about
As a
him?
young kid, probably 15, 16 years old, has all the testosterone running through him. Think he has one of the biggest empires in the world. Thinks he can conquer anything.
Dude, the Macedonians, they conquered
Imagine
the world.
if you're 16 years old, you're riding horses, fighting with swords every day. You got the biggest empire in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just think you can do whatever you want. I'm gonna go take. I like that island. It looks really nice. Like I think I can set up a house there. I'm gonna just go take it for myself.
Hey,
That's what he was probably thinking.
Alexander, I was saying, like, since you have half the world, you want to just like kind of make a truce since you have so much land? No, I'm good.
I got the strongest army.
No, I want to kill
good.
you.
Yeah,
I want to take
good.
everything that you have.
Yeah.
But okay, so do you think Napoleon? Like, okay, Napoleon's a top 5 general of all time. Alexander the Great's a top 5 general of all time.
Top 3.
Alexander might be the greatest.
Yeah. No, Genghis Khan's probably number 1.
Okay, up there. You can have a debate about it.
I'd go Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, and then that Cyrus the Great from Persia.
Okay.
1, 2, and 3.
And then would you say Napoleon's like 4 or 5?
I don't know any other ones really that were such major generals.
Okay.
I mean, maybe because Napoleon's the only one off the top of my head, yeah, but I'd have to look into it.
But this is interesting. So just think about like the greatest generals ever. Like we talk about Alexander the Great, how you think he was as a person or how people depict him. And you look at how Napoleon's depicted. It's like they both were masterful at strategy, but they were so different.
Yeah. Well, you got to think of this. Alexander the Great was thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Napoleon was 200 years ago.
Was it 2,000 years ago? Yeah.
We have much more first-hand information of Napoleon than we do of Alexander the Great.
Yeah. No,
that's
but
2,000 years of oral tradition versus 200 years of just oral tradition.
Though. It was written. Okay,
but still stuff gets passed on.
The Library of Alexandria was burned.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of shit got burned. Like
it's a lot different. It's a huge time
think about
span.
how much history was lost when they burned like the kingdom or the Temple of Solomon twice. They burned down the Library of Alexandria. Like all this stuff that was like recorded from like our past from like 2,000 years ago was lost forever. Like we don't even know how we built the pyramids. Like think about that. Like we don't know how the pyramids were built.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like there's just so much history that's like lost. So you have no idea what happened. You have to like scatter all the pieces together,
even if it was still
glue
around,
it together, and assume things.
Even if it was still around, how do we know we can read it? The Rosetta Stone.
Rosetta Stone.
That's just for hieroglyphs, though.
Dude, they were able to translate the Dead Sea Scrolls. That was in Arabic, ancient Arabic.
The Rosetta Scroll or the Rosetta Stone they did. I think they translated with the Rosetta Stone. They translated it Egyptian hieroglyphs. I don't know if that was the Dead Sea Scrolls.
That's insane to me. Like, how can you translate a language that's been dead for 1,000 years?
I don't know.
Okay, if you had to say this right now, and this is my take on it, I think the French Revolution was kind of a joke. I'm just going to say it. I think it was kind of a joke. They lost.
Well, wouldn't have ever happened if the American Revolution didn't happen. And
It would have never
They
happened.
think they have a chance. Like, oh, these guys did it. Now we can do it.
You know what's so messed up about that part too? It's like the French helped the Americans win that war against the British, and then when they went to their own revolution, the Americans stayed out of it. They were isolationists. They were like, nope, we need to build up our own country. We're not going to help you.
They weren't like we weren't an imperial country at that time.
We weren't strong enough to build it. We had no military. We had no navy.
It wasn't. Yeah, we had no money.
Yeah. But the French helped us. So thank you, France. Thank you, France, for helping us win the independence. But for you guys, on the other hand, it's just tough. It's just tough. Yeah, I was watching this thing. It's on Hulu. I don't know what it's called. It might be called The Crown or some shit. But
yeah, that's on Netflix.
But it's like some Russian the Tsar, right, from the 1700s. It's like Catherine the Great. It's just talking about like Russian royalty.
Oh, that's not The Crown then.
It's not called The Crown. It's on Hulu.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
But it's about like the Russian Empire in the 1700s, and it kind of depicts them trying to like go into Sweden and taking that land, like Nordic land. But like the people playing in these shows are all British.
In that show you're talking about,
you
watched it or no?
Yeah, no, I'm watching it
right now.
They're all British,
and you don't even know what it's called.
Liz showed me it. But they're Russians, but they're played as they're played by British people. Like who won the war. You won the war. You're going to make Napoleon look bad because the Brits ended up winning. The West won, right? If Napoleon wins that, right, not every actor would be British playing different countries in like shows and stuff around the world.
Oh, yeah, this is what I was wanting to say inside real quick. How your dad was talking about how like, and we've talked about this too, like when you're basically America is one of the only countries in the world where it's not normal to speak two languages.
Yeah.
And like in Europe, everybody speaks two languages. At least everybody speaks English and whatever most of the people. Mm-hmm. Imagine if America, every state was a different country.
Yeah, kill me.
No, but just imagine that. Like it'd be like Europe. Like every state basically is a different. I mean, some states will be consolidated into one. Like
yeah.
So say there's 30 countries in America or 25 countries in America, and almost all of them speak different languages. We live in California, this country of California. Mm-hmm. I bet we'd speak 3-4 languages if that was the case.
But it's weird, but the way the government was formed here, though, in the United States, because it's like state rights. So like it's culturally different in each state.
We can get so.
It's just the language is the same. The language unifies the entire country.
About this land that we're living in had hundreds of languages before we got here with all the different native tribes.
Yeah.
And we just wiped them out. Like imagine if the natives still, because like over time we would promise them land over here, mm-hmm. and we just keep taking it and taking it. And eventually, like imagine if the whole Pacific Northwest, like Oregon, Washington, Montana, Idaho, all that is all native territory, and they still have their language. Like I bet you we would all speak Native American or that one language that they speak up there. I guarantee we would.
It's crazy how ideas spread, because the only way the Brits were able to be the Brits was because of the British Isles. They're on an island. Like that's the only way they were the top dogs of Europe. And they had the best navy
in the world.
Yeah, they had the best navy because they're on an island.
Yeah.
Right? And all the other countries are all in this one. They're all on one continent of Europe. They're all in this one area. They all have to battle it out.
Sharing
and
borders.
There's no divider. There's no divider.
I know, they share borders.
The only divider might be Switzerland with just the mountains around there, and it's hard to go into Switzerland with the roads getting blocked off.
Like geographical borders, but yeah.
I mean that probably makes a bigger factor than anything.
Yeah.
With like deciding who's going to be controlling what, right? It's all about resources. About are you going to get invaded? Can you develop things?
Like in the 1400s, like up until like Christopher Columbus, like discovered like America and like
the Americas.
Yeah, like Europe was like kind of a shithole. Like,
well, wasn't any place
empires?
Wasn't every place?
They weren't. There was not a lot of wealth. Like the major empires were like in India from spice trading.
Mongolians.
Well, not even
maybe
that far. But like there was like big empires in Asia and kind of over the Middle East a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was like Turkey wouldn't allow Europe to walk through their land bridge into Asia and trade with these other countries. And there wasn't the Suez Canal at that point, so they had to basically go all around Africa to go trade with these other countries.
Yeah.
And that's how like they started trading. But then once Christopher Columbus, and you know how European colonialism, like how they started making colonies everywhere, all over Africa, everywhere they could, islands all over the French Polynesian, wherever they could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Columbus basically came. At first, he thought he was in the West Indies when he came to America. Like he thought he's in like West India.
Yeah.
Like the islands.
Yeah, he was trying to find a
then he's like
faster trade
trading
route.
with these people, and he's realizing like they have nobody to protect him. Like we can just, and he wrote like a letter back to the king saying like we can just take this land for the king and all this shit.
I mean, think
and
about
then
like
that's literally where the birth of colonialism started. And then you start seeing people going all over Africa, people going all over and taking all these lands.
because of how easy, because they didn't have the technology. So I mean,
Yeah.
Europe was more advanced
No,
than most
dude,
of the world.
they weren't.
Because how were they able to take over everything? Like because they had
Well, they started
because the
taking
Spanish
over
Empire was
America.
big too in the 1400s with like 1492 with Christopher Columbus.
Well,
it was the Spanish that
was
sent them there.
sponsored. Well, then it starts. What started happening is instead of it being state sponsored by the king, like these voyages, it started being like the birth of corporations came around.
Yep.
And then they started sponsoring these voyages,
Mhm.
like the Dutch East India Company
Yes.
and all that shit. And that's where it all started.
Let me ask you this, because I'm going to go back. I'm going to go even more back because you talked about how they wouldn't even let them go trade through Asia.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is
like
Europe,
Turkey wouldn't.
Yeah, Europe had no real trades, and then they started like their food tasted bland. They didn't even have black pepper. Like,
Yeah.
they had nothing, and then they started trading with.
It was
all
like
these countries.
gold.
Yeah, and they get spices was huge back then. Like it actually made their food not taste like nothing.
Yeah.
Like I forget what, like in India, all like silks were made in like East China or like West China and stuff, like whatever empire was over there.
Mm-hmm.
And like you see all these people coming back, like these Portuguese guys that were going on voyages there, Spanish guys coming back in these nice silks, coming back with all these spices, and then once they start ramping, that's when Europe started making a shit ton of money.
Yeah. Well, what made Europe is the ideas that it spread throughout the world. I mean,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
Christianity. They would have this cross on their sails.
But like, think about just being free, like being as a free human being, like being able to think freely of yourself, doing things
back then
differently.
It's still all indentured servants back then.
I know, but it's the starting stages. Like there was people back then that were like, maybe we're all equal. You know what I mean? Maybe this isn't like a hierarchy of
still a lot of indentured servants until all this started. Then once all this started happening, all this money starts coming in. Now all these rich landlords who are rich 50 years ago and the guys with the only money aren't the guys who have money now.
Well, okay. So during that time, you're saying indentured servitude and why Europe is so like there's so many like small like countries in Europe. It's all from feudalism. It's all from like little having like little castles, little lords, having people living on the land.
Yeah, that's how it was. Yeah,
and just like you're competing with this land all around Europe. But okay, let's go back because this all happens because of the Roman Empire collapsing, right? Rome was the heart of Europe.
Rome collapsed.
Well, what are you talking about? Like the
like
east, the western part of Rome collapsed. What in the 460s? In the 460s, and then the Byzantine Empire collapsed in the 1400s.
So it was the Byzantine Empire.
Byzantine, but it was okay. It was Constantinople. So let me ask you this.
Yeah, they wouldn't let you pass through. They wouldn't let him pass through.
So why did Constantine? This is the Roman Emperor, 300 AD.
Yeah.
Why did he move the capital of Rome from Rome to Constantinople?
Because
to put it on the
modern-day
eastern side.
Istanbul is such. He literally had control of that land bridge to the west.
But think about why would you put the capital on the gates
or to the east?
Like,
I mean, my bad. He basically got to control all the trade east of that. Like
yeah.
So he's the only one making all that money off of that, and then he can trade everything he gets to the west of him.
But then what that created
Constantinople was like the best geographical location for anywhere in that part of the world. Like you literally controlled the gates to the east and the gates to the west.
But what that created was a split between church and state. Because then there's people from
that's
Rome.
Way longer.
It literally started right after that because Constantine made the Catholic Church the main religion of the empire. He moves the capital from west to east. So now you have the state over here, and you have the Roman Catholic Church right here.
Yeah, but
it's like who do I look to for authority? I don't know who to listen to.
When the Catholic Church schism happened, it was when one church was like in France and one church was in
That was like in the
Rome.
1000s.
Oh.
But it started from there. That was the
Yeah,
seeds.
but the real schism was then.
1091.
Yeah.
Or no, 1054 was the
What-
great schism between the
Yeah.
West and the Eastern Church.
Yeah, but one of them was like in Rome and the other one was in France, wasn't it?
No, that was like, I think Avignon, that was like the 1200s when there was like an illegitimate pope, and like we're going to say
but that's what they
we're
call
gonna
the
elect our
Great
own pope.
Schism. I
No,
don't
the
think they
schism was
ref-
1054 because, okay, so you go to Constantinople, right? You have your own ideas of Catholicism. Now you have the Roman Church on the west side. You guys are disagreeing with certain points about the church. So then there's just like, okay, well, forget them. We think we're right and they think they're wrong. Or they think they're right and we think we're right. So we're just going to split up. So East and West is created
Yeah,
in
and that's
1054.
like where the Eastern Orthodox Church came out from.
So it all kind of started when you moved the capital from Rome to Constantinople. And then why move the capital to where enemy territories are right there that are easily to be invaded? If you're in Rome, you have to go through the Mediterranean to get to Rome, or you have to go through the Arabian Peninsula all the way up past
Through a
Spain
bunch of
into Europe.
different
It's way
empires.
harder. It's way harder to conquer Rome than it is
Well,
Constantinople.
there's a reason they did it, dude, and I think
Obviously
there's
there's
obviously
a
a
reason.
reason they did it.
Well, maybe it's you can call it ego. Maybe Constantine just wanted a place named after him, and he wanted to be the guy.
He could have named anywhere after him, though. Like, Constantinople was already probably a major city.
You can't change Rome, though. You can't change that name.
He
of
could
Rome.
have if he wanted to.
He could have, but it would have probably got so much like pushback
Yeah,
from the
but he
people.
could have done it.
He could have done it, but he probably, I don't know. It's interesting though, because it's weird how like all history is so like connected to each other. Like if this happens, that means this is going to happen. If this happens, that means this is going to happen. And you can tie it all back. So it's interesting that the reason why Christopher Columbus decided to find a faster trade route to get to Asia is because Turkey or Istanbul at the time, which was Muslim ran, wouldn't let him come through.
Yeah.
They wouldn't trade through. So that's kind of like, it's crazy how that's the reason why Christopher Columbus ended up in America.
Yeah.
Like
that's
that
exactly
voyage.
Why. That's
It's crazy.
exactly why. He just tried to find a different route than to go all the way around Africa.
You know, what are your thoughts on Christopher Columbus? Because a lot of people think he's a piece of shit.
I don't know much about him, to be honest.
I mean, just the way he treated those people.
I don't know much about him. I haven't ever done any. What I know about Christopher Columbus is what I hear from when I'm in second, third grade.
Yeah.
Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Okay. Well, this is what I will say.
Like, I don't know much about the guy.
This is what I will say. You cannot copy and paste morality of today and put it back in time, and then have like a rubric of how people were treated back then, and be like, well, up to today's standards, these people were terrible. But like at the time, it was just normal. Like things are constantly changing, but you cannot go back into the past and judge people.
I know exactly what you mean. Even as short as 250 years ago, France is using the guillotine and beheading people in the middle of the streets.
You want to know when the last
like if you
guillotine
did that
was?
now,
You want to know when the last
When?
guillotine was? In the 70s.
that's crazy.
It was in the 70s.
But like if you do that now in France, Paris, oh my
Yeah.
God. In Paris already, those Parisians just love to protest already as it is.
Oh yeah, they did it
They
this
would
year.
go nuts. They do it all the time. And there's always a protest in Paris.
So you want to get into that right now? Why they had to raise the age to get Social Security?
Yeah, it's about something with wages and shit.
It's migration to the country. You can't
Yeah.
you can't pay all those people because you
Yeah.
have all this mass immigration coming from the Middle East. They're all coming up there. They're
Like
all
Syrians, like Syrian refugees.
they're flooding the country. They're not
Yeah.
even Europeans anymore. So
Yeah,
now
North African refugees.
it's like we can't pay all these people, so we have to raise the age 2 more years, so people have to keep paying taxes on it. It's
no,
weird.
I think it was the retirement age.
Retirement, yeah,
it was
Social
the
Security.
retirement age, yeah.
Social Security. I guess, yeah, retirement age, sure. They
That's what
raised
it
it
was.
because there's a mass migration going into these European countries where they're not even European anymore.
All right. Well, think about this is what I wanted to talk about to start the pod before, but we had to get into all of our stuff that we had to talk about. But like, think of this. I was listening to this the other day. Imagine back in the 40s, like the only way people are getting information, like nowadays people get information from social media,
Yeah.
all the TVs, everything. Back in the 40s, there are no TVs. There's movie theaters and there's radio. During like the World War II, the only way people are getting like information on what's happening is they go to the movie theater and see something. We're making great advances in the Europe front, west or east of Paris,
You
like
can
all
control
that.
information way easier.
That's what I'm getting to. Like, people could have controlled the narrative. Like, think of how easily the narrative could have been controlled back then. There's probably 4 radio stations. If you control the biggest radio station or all 4 of them, plus a movie theaters. Like, you can literally make Americans think anything in the world or any country that has it. You can make them think whatever you want. Like, that's how easily the narrative is. And then now you get information like that.
Well,
and,
that's what.
But people still don't know what's true or not. Like, it's crazy.
Okay, that's interesting because I think it's always been going on. But like, you know, like.
Propaganda,
and like,
all that's been going on.
Yeah, propaganda was probably way easier back then. And
so easy.
You know, it's a different form of it now because it's just you just try and confuse people now with like all this different like countering information about the main topic. But whatever, like different sides to it. But I mean, this definitely started during the rise of social media, and at the same time, on the parallel side of it, it's Trump becoming president in 2016, announcing in 2015 when social media is running more popular. People are becoming more like. People are using social media more, and so they're on it more. And at the same time, you got Trump coming out saying fake news CNN, big mainstream media. They're trying to lie to you. They're trying to manipulate you. They're trying to control the way you think or how you see issues. And it's the digital age, and it wasn't necessarily Trump. It's like it could have been anyone who was just that polarizing, right? It wasn't just Trump that triggered everybody. It was the fact that social media was rising and there was more outlets to get your ideas out there, and you were able to like do your own research and be like, hey, CNN's like kind of hiding a certain part of this story that maybe should be told, right? I couldn't even imagine, like, I mean, I go back to this all the time, but FDR had polio and nobody really knew that.
But
like,
it's not like
but
it
I'm
was
saying
Biden, like having polio and not being able to walk is different than having dementia.
No, but I'm just saying no one knew that he had polio back then. Like he would literally like hold on to the presser and just stand.
He would get
stand up
wheelchaired
like
around.
This. No, but like when he was on TV, he would like will himself just
I
like
think
walk a little bit.
People knew the president had polio.
But I don't think it was common
because like
known.
I think it is what made the polio scare even worse. Like the president got it and he can't walk. Yeah. Like, I bet you everybody knew the president had polio and nobody cared because he was still 100% up there. Like, Biden, on the other hand, is not even 10% up there anymore. I mean, remember that the shooting that happened somewhere a couple months ago? He comes to address, like, the White House press people. Yeah. And the first thing he says is, I just had chocolate chip ice cream upstairs. They let me have chocolate chip ice cream in the middle of the day.
I love it always like they did.
Like
they let me have it.
Like that's what I mean. Like, dude, he's just totally gone. You've seen so many clips of him not even be able to say his words. The Xi Jinping. Like, remember that clip where he said something about Xi Jinping and it has nothing to do with it?
Oh yeah, did you that one clip of him calling Xi Jinping a dictator and that dude like cringing? He's like, oh my gosh, why would you?
That was
just
a different
say
one.
That
was a different one. Yeah, but yeah, I saw that.
Talk about Xi Jinping.
If Biden was the president in the 70s, he would have been already called for an impeachment. They would have been called for him to see a doctor and get evaluated. And if the doctor said he has dementia, he would have got impeached. If Trump was the president in the 70s, he would have just been another president. It would have never been all this animosity towards him and all this shit.
This is where I think we kind of disagree. I just think there would have been better candidates back then.
Yeah,
like, I don't even think he would have been on. He couldn't even get on the ticket.
I agree, but I'm just saying if he was, I totally agree.
Like no one, like who's. Like,
but it's not like Biden. He's been in politics forever. He's just now getting
Dude, you know
sick.
he ran for president in the 80s against Reagan? Or it might have been Bush or Reagan.
But I'm just saying,
he ran in the 80s.
He's been a senator forever. And even when he was vice president for Obama, he was still up there. He's just now recently, in the last probably 5 years, started getting sick.
You're definitely getting like a vice president.
Like a mental decline.
You get like a vice president vibe with Biden. It's like he's there, but it's kind of just like... It's like
he's not the
it's
one
like take him out
to
the pasture. Take him out to the pasture and look at the
Yeah,
sunlight, right?
He's not the one. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Let him stay at his house in Delaware. We are going to run the country.
So things are running more smoothly. Like
Kamala doesn't run it
no
either.
Friction.
She has nothing to do with it either.
I mean, she's hiding away from the media because her approval ratings are lower than Biden's.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I think that's the only reason they don't have. Also, they don't want to get Biden impeached because it's just not good for them in the next elections. But like,
they want him to like just get out of the way.
But
like,
yeah,
let Newsom run.
if like say he were to pass away, they don't want Kamala any more than they have Biden. And honestly, Biden's easier to control than Kamala would be, even though they have Kamala by the balls.
That would be a disaster if Biden died because then she would be the ticket.
Yeah, but they have her by the balls too. They would just the same shit.
But no one's gonna vote for her.
Oh no, I know, but that's why Newsom's gonna have to.
What they were going for in 2020 was like okay, just get anyone in office that's not Trump. Like, that was like why people voted for Biden. It wasn't just because Biden's policies were good or Biden's body of work was like, okay, reminds me of like the Obama administration. Sure, maybe you voted because of that, but it was mostly because like we can't have that orange man in the office again, so we need to vote for anyone other than Trump.
Well, he's going to win.
And so, yeah.
He's winning in 2020.
Well, now we're in 2 wars. We're in 2 conflicts, and it's like, damn, well, Trump was the only president in this century that we haven't gone to war with.
What do you think Trump does if he gets elected in 2024 and it's January of whatever the day he gets elected and it's 2025 the day he comes into office?
Yeah.
What do you think the first thing do you think the conflict still? What do you think his first moves are with the war in Ukraine and the war in Israel?
Okay, well, can we break down like what would be a perfect scenario of like everything to happen? Like,
I'm just saying
there's an armistice with Russia and Ukraine.
I'm saying this: if everything is going exactly how it is now, I don't think the Israel thing will be going.
That's going to keep going. It's been going for 2,000 years.
No, but I'm saying like how it is really ramped up now. I think it'll get ramped down.
It'll die, yeah.
But like,
it'll go out in the news cycle.
Russia, Ukraine is exactly how it is right now. When Trump comes in, what do you think he does? You think he's stopping it right away?
I think he puts more pressure on Europe to fund it.
Oh, he won't give them shit.
I know, but I think he's like he wants Europe to put.
But that's
more
when we get
money
back to what we talked
Ukraine.
about last time. Like what we talked about on the podcast that didn't get posted. Like we've put $100 billion into Ukraine, and it's all in the form of debt. Like what happens if Russia takes over Ukraine? Do we not get any of that money back? Like now we're so heavily invested in that war.
I don't think that's possible. I think at this point right now, I think they're trying to make Russia as a country just weaker. Like, yeah, you want to keep just draining all their resources, and you want them to become weaker. So then there's only really one world power out there, and that's China. So it's us and China, and then because once Russia kind of dismantles and like it goes the scatter pieces all over the world, it becomes very sparse. I think that's the goal. I think that's the long game because the Russia's strategy with war.
They just met with Kim Jong-un.
They just throw bodies at people.
Yeah. Like, well, they just met with Putin. Just met with Kim Jong-un because he's trying to get military equipment. Mm-hmm. He's running out of military equipment, and he can't get any.
And I think that's what the Americans are thinking because it's like Russia's a world power, but if they become very weak. They lose a bunch of their population. They lose a bunch of their resources. Everyone they pretty much got blackballed from just trading with Russia. Like there was a bunch of tariffs on them. Like you're just trying to crush them and make them as weak as possible. And then maybe they go into China's lap, but Russia's unsalvageable. Like you cannot bring Russia back after just diminishing all their resources.
They've probably lost already over 1 million people.
And they're probably beating the Ukrainians. Like, just straight up, they probably are beating the Ukrainians.
But what happens if, like, how do we get our money, like, with all the money we've sent to them, it's all in the form of debt.
Yeah.
How do we get our money back if Russia comes out just unanimously on top?
Okay, well, that's the...
Like, if Ukraine becomes a Russian state...
That's a double-edged sword there because I think we're able to be in debt because of the military. We're able to keep countries protected. Right, if we're able to protect Ukraine from the Russians invading them, well, then we can be $100 billion in debt because our military is so strong. It's like we're going to allow you to do whatever you want.
I saw about why we're so wanting to get into the Ukrainian war. It's like logistically wise, like just because we know eventually we're probably going to go to war with China or Russia,
and you want to crush Russia's economy because you don't want Russia to be allies with
that too.
China.
But also, it's like. We're wanting to if it ever comes to that where we're out of war with China or Russia, we're basically practicing right now, like logistically how to get tanks, or how we're gonna get tanks over there, how we're gonna get all this equipment over there, and it's basically like a test run of when we actually have to do it ourselves.
I mean,
and like who's gonna be behind us for this? Like probably all of NATO will go to war with us if we're going to. I mean, if we're going to war with Russia or China, we have all of NATO behind our back. We have every country.
Yeah, but Russia and China are they're just together.
I think we would maul them. I think NATO and America mauls Russia and China, like bad.
But it's weird because some countries in NATO they don't want to support Ukraine. They almost want to keep trading with the Russians freely. They don't. They want the Russians to do whatever they want.
Stuff, yeah.
But I mean, everything's a war of economics, right? Everything's a Cold War. After World War II, it's not going to be like everyone fighting each other because if everyone fights each other, everyone loses. No one wins. There has to be a winner. So everything's based off economics. So all these proxy wars are getting propped up to fight in your interest economically. So if you're looking in that lens, you're trying to make Russia's economy as weak as possible so that they can't be a threat to you maybe in the future, right? Maybe China doesn't have as strong of an ally as they thought they did. Jackson just turned on some freaking MMA thing
Huge
while I'm
UFC
talking
event
about
tonight.
Russia economics and the Ukraine-Russia war.
They're getting into the top. They're getting into the co-main event and shit now. I don't have to actually. I just wanted to watch this fight because Davison Figueiredo. It's his first fight at bantamweight.
All right, commentate the fight. Commentate the fight. What's happening?
All right, it's Davison Figueiredo versus Rob Font. First round. We're about 3.5 minutes in. There's a minute and a half left. It's Davison Figueiredo's first fight at bantamweight. He's an ex-flyweight champion. He is just ripped to the teeth. The guy has a 9-pack. He couldn't make weight anymore at 125, so now he bumped up to 135. And the guy he's fighting, Rob Font, is arguably the best boxer in the UFC, and he's just piecing him up right now. I mean, he just landed a major uppercut.
You know what's interesting? And I just thought of this. You talk about, you think about like advertising money, and you think about like these big corporations like in America, based in America, but they're all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if we go into war? And think about like Tesla, think about like Apple, think about these big time companies where the majority of their markets are overseas. And so if the U.S. government was like, hey, can you stop giving them stuff? They'll be like, that's a conflict of our interest. Like, we're not going to just side with you guys. Like, we're going to side with them a little bit, maybe. Like, we're going to give them all our technology. We're going to give them all our data.
I thought you were going at like those companies would just lose a ton of money if it goes out top. But I was going to say like
I'm just saying they're not in American interest. Yeah. They're just not even in American interest. They're based in America, but they're not an American company. They're a world company. They're just a business. And I don't know that's got to be a big factor too, thinking about that. But this I think a bunch of this misinformation stuff and all like the stuff buzzing around in social media and all this different viewpoints of like one issue, I think this is like the biggest and the most important time as us of Americans. Think about like, I just feel like us as a society has been getting dumbed down for the last 50 years. And we talked about this. We posted this on TikTok with the subversion methods of that
Yuri Bezmenov.
Yuri Bezmenov. It's like, we just need to become more informed as a country and be more open to ideas and discourse, because I think those ideas that were first grown in Europe and that came over here of having discourse, of talking through issues, of understanding issues and not suppressing speech, I think that's the only way out of this, because I think
people just get too offended now. It's all an offend. Like if even people are so stubborn and get so offended now, like if they know they have the wrong vision or the wrong idea of something, they won't admit it, and they'll just double down on that wrong idea or that wrong ideal because they're so stubborn, and they just people get offended now.
What it is, it's barbaric in a sense of like, even though I might be wrong on that part of the issue,
I have no problem saying I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, exactly, but not a lot of people are.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, people get so offended if you say you're wrong. They double down even harder on that thing that's wrong.
Yeah.
And there's so many people like that now.
Well, it's like it's sports teams. It's like, okay, I'm wearing a Green Bay Packers jersey. All right. So whatever they do, whatever Green Bay Packers support, I'm going to support because I'm a fan. And if you're a Bears fan, you're going to support the complete opposite thing of what I'm supporting. And so there's going to be this fucking combating.
The thing about that sport, because you can go to
but it's kind of like
game
that
in Chicago against Green Bay, and they'll be green, and you'll be having a beer right next to a Green Bay guy, having a good time watching the game with them. Sports fans are different.
Yes, I guess. But when we have like the sports debates, though, when you're talking about like Fav or like some dude from like Mike Ditka, like, you know what I mean? You're talking about these players and stuff. Like, there's always like, I don't like Green Bay, I don't like the Bears. It's kind of like that. Like, I'm siding with the Bears because I'm a Bears fan, and I can't agree with a Packers fan because then I'm not a Bears fan.
Yeah, like you're using that as an analogy.
Yeah, that's the analogy of like, okay, I'm picking my side, and even though that side could be wrong on stuff, like I drafted Jordan Love, that wasn't the right move. But I'm a Green Bay fan, so I like Jordan Love. It's kind of like that same thing. Shout out Jordan Love, Bakersfield guy. Just don't think he's the guy there. No, but I think it's just we need to have discourse. I think we need to just talk through things. I think this podcast space is great. I think you get to actually share ideas, and you actually get to think out loud for a change instead of just like bottling up all your thoughts and not really like articulating it rightly. So I don't know. I think we're in a time of change. We're in an interesting period in history, because I think this is like I think the last 100 years of modernity, I think it's changing the concept of what constitutes us as humans and like what's allowed and what's not allowed. And we're going through this transitionary period where I think we all have to be open to ideas, but then we also have to be open to being wrong as well. So I think a guy that's actually kind of taking that stand of like hearing all ideas and being open to other sides of issues is this guy right here. I mean, that video that came out recently with him telling Bob Iger to go F himself, I love it because it's like, okay, you're not agreeing with Disney's values. You're not agreeing with what they have to say. And so therefore,
more than Disney is as a whole company, his own net worth is worth basically just as much as Disney, give or take.
Yeah.
You don't give a shit.
But he's basically a king, right? Yeah. He basically can take over Constantinople.
If you're worth $200 billion, do you give a shit what you say about anything?
Yeah.
I don't.
Because there's so much more money tied to it, but it's just like telling Bob Iger to go F himself when you're like the richest man in the world on paper, like obviously Putin or like those type of guys are probably worth more, but just like in the private sector, he's a king. He's a modern day king. I'm just saying like he can manipulate like countries doing certain things and telling like not to get blackballed by a big corporation like Disney. I think it's huge. And like his Tesla model, like having no commercials, like not advertising Tesla at all. And the only advertisement is Elon Musk. I think that model is going to continue down. Like, I don't think advertising is going to be what we think of advertising today. Just because of guys like that condemning people.
The way it works for him is he makes such a good product that everybody who gets one talks always so highly about it and makes their circle want to get one. Like Joe Rogan talks so highly about Tesla. Yeah. Like he loves his Tesla.
Because he's real. And
it's because it's that good. When you have that good of a product.
Yeah.
You don't need advertising. You don't need to market it.
But this is a dude that does things that people tell him not to do, and he does it anyways, and it ends up working. But here's a little tidbit of it. He was talking about Biden, and they were having like some EV summit, like at the White House, and they invited GM, Ford, all like the big car companies getting into the EV, and just like business. But they didn't invite Tesla. But why did they not invite Tesla? They're the biggest. They have the biggest piece of the pie in the EV market in the United States, and they're the biggest EV market in the entire world that they take up, right? They're huge, they're bigger in China, but they're also the biggest company in the United States when it comes to EVs, and you don't invite that guy. Why? Because he's saying things that go against the other team's side. And so if you're not going to allow that, you're not going to allow discourse or looking at someone differently.
Well, you're thinking companies like Ford and GM, they're these American institutions that like have been around for years, tens of decades, like, and they have more. Yeah, but even if Elon Musk, though, if he was a guy who would abide by these guys' rules and would like bow down to the government and shit,
he gets subsidized. He got bailed out. He like the government saved him from going bankrupt with Tesla. But
but like he like these companies like Ford and GM, they've lobbied for so long. Yeah. Like they're so close with the government already.
You know, they may be American institutions, but they gave up that card the second they outsourced to other countries, and they left all those working class Americans away with jobs, ruining areas, ruining towns. I mean, look at Michigan. Look at that area, right? That had a lot of money up there, and they left that industry. They left that area.
Yeah, you will go through Detroit now. It's disgusting.
It's disgusting. Look at Cleveland.
Yeah.
Look at like Baltimore. Look at Pittsburgh. Like it's all just, they're not they're not American institutions no more because they went against America's interests. They went, only for profiteering, and and we can go into capitalism and why that's an issue and like why it's a it's a tragedy of the commons, right? Because you're trying to maximize profits and therefore you leave everyone behind. But it just. I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. I was really happy to see him say that. I know a lot of people aren't, but like, what are we teaching as a nation is you have to just go with the mainstream narrative. And if you go off that, if you have a different idea of what everyone's saying to go down this track, like ESG, DEIs, like just grading skills of like how you should be as a company or like what your viewpoints are as a company, you're going to get punished for that? Well, hell no, you shouldn't. You should be only judged based off the product itself, not what he's saying. Like, I'm not saying he should say like anti-Semitic things, but I'm just saying he should be able to have some speech.
And
like, he should be able to say some
that just
points.
Takes it back to what's wrong with the world today.
Yeah.
40 years ago, 20 years ago, it's a whole different ball game for him.
20 years ago, well, I mean, you look
at
the
world America was a entirely different nation 20 years ago.
Well, yeah, and so what do you know that, but like, what were the events that started changing America? So like epoch events,
feminism coming up.
No, epoch, like an epoch event that happened in the beginning of the 21st century was obviously 9/11, right?
Yeah.
We initiate the Patriot Act. We put TSA in airports, where we go way more like focused on security, protecting people, not hurting people's feelings, anti-bullying, anti-this, anti-that, anti-that. Less freedom, more security, because of a tragedy that happened in NYC where 2,000 people died, which was horrible. It was horrific. The greatest terrorist act on U.S. soil in its history. But because of that event, we then went down this trail of just in the name of security. In the name of security, we're going to suppress your speech if you're offending people. And I think that's the start of it. And I don't know if these guys think that far ahead but I think that's a big part of it. I really do. I
agree.
I think security is a big deal.
Let's wrap this one up.
What are we doing here?
I need to go. I think we're over an hour. I want to watch this UFC
No,
event.
don't bullshit.
It doesn't
me.
tell us, but I'm pretty sure we are. I think we started at 5, and it's over.
What time is it right now?
It's like 6:10.
Okay.
And I need to piss very bad.
All right, go. I'll close out. Go ahead. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, I will keep harping on this point. People need to be open to ideas, and people also need to admit to being wrong. Like, I'm going to say, I mean, I'll be a beacon of somebody who says I'm wrong, because, I mean, I'm doing this podcast. Each episode's an hour each. We've done almost 60 episodes. I'm going to be wrong a lot. But what I'm trying to say is that we need to be open to having discourse in this country, being open to different viewpoints, understanding them, and not being so like partial about it, right? Like, who are you? Like, that's just so egotistical for you to be like, I'm going to die on this hill because I already said this viewpoint and I'm not going to look stupid. I mean, just thinking that is stupid. Like, I think, there's always going to be polarity in this country where people have different views. But that doesn't mean you condemn the other side. Like, we're all humans at the end of the day, guys. Like, people need to understand that most people are good. Most people attempt to do the right thing. There's only, maybe a % that are sociopaths, psychopaths that are trying to manipulate that straight fact of most people being good and like having people turn against each other. But most people are good, and people need to realize that. Like, there's good Democrats, there's good Republicans, there's bad Democrats, and there's bad Republicans, right? And everything else in the middle and in between. So with that thought, guys, thank you for listening. If you guys haven't noticed, we changed the studio a little bit. Shout out 4-Star Fruit, best grapes in California, perhaps maybe the world. And thank God. Shout out Move My Mask for giving us his GarageBand and computer, for allowing us to do this episode. And you know what? I'm going to keep saying it. If you've made it this far, go fuck yourself.